The crystalline spires of Cathara hummed with collective anguish as Elder Venthali witnessed the first orbital strikes. Through the quantum resonance that connected all of their kind, the pain of each vaporized settlement echoed across the planet. Like a terrible song of death, Venthali's crystal form flickered with desperate light as another city disappeared in fire. The Zephyrian ships hung in space like dark metal vultures, their weapons charging for the next strike. Each blast meant thousands of innocent lives lost forever. "Send the message," Venthali commanded, their voice carrying the weight of their dying world broadcasted across all frequencies. "Someone must hear us." The other elders gathered around the great communication crystal, their forms dim with fear and sorrow. They had never known war. Their people had lived in peace for 10,000 years, sharing thoughts and dreams through their crystal network.
Ow!
That network carried only screams. "What if no one comes?" asked Elder Keftel, their light barely visible. "Then we'd die knowing." "We tried," Venthali replied. The plea went out into the void, carried by quantum waves that could cross the galaxy in moments. The message was simple and desperate. "We are dying. We have nothing to offer but our gratitude. Please, someone save us." 12,000 light-years away on Terra Station above Earth, Admiral Minho studied the translated message with weathered eyes. The Terran Defense Council chamber fell silent as the desperation in the alien transmission became clear.
Oh.
The holographic display showed the Cathara system, a small dot of light in the vast darkness of space. Minho was a tall man with gray hair and scars from too many battles. His uniform was simple blue and black, marked with the symbols of Earth's military. He had fought in the Centauri campaign, had seen what happened when peaceful species met those who saw genocide as policy. "Sir," Captain Eunice spoke quietly from her seat at the council table. Was young for a starship captain, but the war had promoted many young officers when the older ones died. "We have no strategic interest in that sector. Our fleets are." "Still recovering from the Centauri campaign?" Minho nodded slowly. 3 years of brutal interstellar war had taught humanity hard lessons about survival. They had learned to fight species that saw genocide as policy, learned to win by being more ruthless than their enemies. The galaxy was not a kind place, and peaceful species rarely survived first contact with the predators that ruled the void. "Zephyrians," said General Tehan, pulling up data on his tablet. "We know about them. They strip worlds of resources and kill anyone who gets in their way. They have ships, weapons, and no conscience." "Exactly why we should stay away," added Admiral Sora. "We lost 30% of our fleet in the last war. We cannot afford another major battle." Minho walked to the great window that looked out. At Earth, the blue and white planet turned slowly below, peaceful and beautiful. But he could see the construction yards where new warships were being built, the defense stations that ringed the planet like mechanical moons. Earth had learned to protect itself, but at a terrible cost. "They asked for salvation," Minho said quietly. "Not conquest, not resources, salvation." He turned back to the council. "When did we last fight for something other than survival? When did we last help someone who could not help themselves?" Captain Eunice shifted in her seat. "Sir, with respect, we are not the galaxy's police force. We have our own people to protect." "Do we?" Minho asked. "Or have we become so focused on survival that we forgot what we were trying to survive for?" The room fell silent. Outside, Earth's sun cast long shadows across the station's metal corridors. In the distance, the lights of the shipyard sparkled like stars. "I have read their message 50 times, Minho continued.
Yes.
They are not asking us to conquer their enemies. They are not offering us wealth or territory. They are asking us to stop a genocide, and they offer only gratitude in return." General Tehan leaned forward. "Admiral, the Zephyrians have a fleet of 60 ships. We could send 3, maybe 4 vessels without weakening our defenses too much. We ships against 60. Admiral Sora shook her head. "That is not a battle. That is suicide." Minho smiled grimly. "No, Admiral, that is what we do best. We fight impossible odds and win anyway." He looked around the table at the faces of humanity's war leaders. They were scarred, tired, and hard, but they were also human in somewhere. Deep inside, they still remembered what it meant to help those who could not help themselves. The Zephyrians build pretty ships with fancy weapons, Minho said. They are used to fighting peaceful species who surrender quickly. They have never faced an enemy that builds ships specifically to kill other ships. The vote was closer than expected, but humanity had not yet lost its soul to the void. 3 ships would go to Cathara. 3 ships would face an entire fleet. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, salvation would come wrapped in human armor and fury. The 3 Earth dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace like falling hammers, their massive hulls cutting through the darkness of space. The ships were ugly things, built for war rather than beauty. Thick armor plating covered every surface. Gun turrets bristled from their sides like the spines of some mechanical beast. Commander Hyanwu stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the scene unfold on the main screen. Below them, the crystal world of Cathara burned. Above them, 60 Zephyrian ships hung in perfect formation, their weapons still glowing hot from the bombardment. God, whispered Lieutenant Janae from her position at the sensor station. They are killing everything down there. Hyanwu nodded grimly. He was a veteran of the Centauri Wars, a man who had seen what happened when civilized species met those who saw murder as policy. His face was scarred from shrapnel, his left eye replaced with a mechanical implant that glowed softly blue in the dim light of the bridge. Take position between the fleet and the planet, he ordered. Signal the Retribution and Iron Will to do the same. The 3 human ships moved into formation, their engines burning bright against the starfield. They were dwarfed by the Zephyrian fleet, tiny specks, compared to the sleek alien vessels that surrounded them. Sir, called Communications Officer Sujin. The aliens are trying to contact us. Put them through, Hyanwu said. The main screen flickered. Suddenly they were looking at the bridge of a Zephyrian command ship. The alien commander was tall and angular, with skin like polished black stone and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. Behind him, other Zephyrians moved with fluid grace, their forms elegant and deadly. Unknown vessels, the alien commander said, his voice like silk over steel. You are interfering with a lawful pacification operation. Withdraw immediately or face obliteration. Hyanwu stepped forward, his scarred face calm and steady. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had been through this before, had faced impossible odds and survived through skill, determination, and the simple refusal to give up. Negative, Hyanwu said simply. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The alien's laugh was like breaking glass, sharp and cutting. Your primitive vessels cannot hope to match our technology. We have conquered 100 worlds with ships like these. Then you have never fought humans, Hyanwu replied. The Zephyrian commander's eyes narrowed. You are unknown to us. What species are you? We are the species that build ships to kill other ships, Hyanwu said. Last warning. Withdraw or be destroyed. The alien's response was swift and brutal. The transmission cut, and suddenly space filled with deadly light as the Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Energy beams that could crack mountains lashed out at the 3 human ships. Enough firepower to level a city concentrated into a few seconds of terrible destruction. The beams struck the Earth ships and scattered harmlessly across their thick armor plating like rain on metal. The human vessels were built for exactly this kind of punishment. Where the Zephyrians had elegant shields and graceful hulls, the humans had layers of dense armor and redundant systems. Minor damage to outer hull, reported Lieutenant Janae. All systems green. Turn fire, Hyanwu ordered calmly. The human response was thunder and lightning. The 3 ships opened up with everything they had, and space filled with a different kind of destruction. Kinetic projectiles moving at speeds that bent reality punched through the alien energy shields like they were made of paper. Railguns fired metal slugs that hit with the force of nuclear weapons. Missile pods opened and released clouds of smart warheads that sought out targets with mechanical precision. The elegant Zephyrian ships had never faced weapons like these. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Their graceful hulls crumpled like paper as humanity's philosophy of warfare met their refined technology. Direct hit on their flagship, called Lieutenant Jinneh. 3 destroyers down. 5 more taking heavy damage. The Zephyrian commander's image appeared again on the screen, his perfect features twisted with rage and disbelief. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and flashing warning lights. "Impossible," he snarled. "Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are crude." "Yes," Hyan Wu agreed, "but they work." Another volley of human fire tore through the alien formation. The Zephyrians tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for precision strikes against unarmored targets. Against the human ships, they might as well have been throwing stones. In 15 minutes, half the alien fleet was debris floating in space. The survivors broke formation, some trying to flee, others attempting desperate ramming attacks. The human ships methodically destroyed them all, their weapons systems working with mechanical efficiency. "Ceasefire," Hyan Wu ordered as the last Zephyrian ship exploded. "Signal the planet. Let them know the immediate threat is over." Bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of machinery. Below them, the crystal world of Cathara still burned, but no more fire fell from the sky. The genocide had been stopped, and humanity had once again proven that sometimes the ugly, brutal solution was the right one. The surviving Zephyrian forces retreated to the surface like wounded animals seeking shelter. Their elegant ships were gone, turned to burning metal in the void above. But they still had ground troops, still had weapons, and most importantly, they still had hostages. Colonel Jae-soon watched the tactical display in the drop pod bay of the Indomitable. Red dots showed Zephyrian positions scattered across the crystal cities below. Blue dots showed the locations of Cathara civilians, huddled in buildings and refugee camps throughout the combat zone. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Haijin, her voice tight with anger, "they have dragged civilians into every defensive position. They are using them as human shields." Jae-sung nodded grimly. He was a short, stocky man with hands like steel and eyes that had seen too much war. Scars covered his arms from the Centauri campaign, where he had learned that sometimes the only way to save innocent lives was to fight through hell itself. "They think we will hesitate," he said, his voice carrying through the tactical network. To every Marine in the pod bay, "They think we will choose the easy path." Around him, 200 Marines prepared for battle. They wore powered armor that made them look like mechanical demons, black metal plates covering every inch of their bodies. Their weapons were simple but deadly, designed to work in any environment against any enemy. "Listen up," Jae-sung continued, walking among his troops. "The aliens down there believe that humans are like them. They think we will see hostages and give up. They think we will negotiate and make deals." He stopped in front of Sergeant Dalsu, a veteran of the Centauri meat grinder. The sergeant was checking his rifle for the 5th time, his scarred hands moving with practiced precision. Should have surrendered when they had the chance. Dalsu spat, his voice full of cold fury. "The Zephyrians do not understand us," Jae-sung said. "They fight wars to conquer. We fight wars to end them. They take hostages to gain advantage. We take hostages to mean we fight harder, not softer." Private Bioram raised her hand. She was young, barely 20, but she had volunteered for this mission. "Sir, how do we fight them without hurting the civilians?" Jae-sung smiled grimly.
We
"Fight them by being better than they are. Every shot counts. Every move matters. Go in fast, hit hard, and end this before more innocent people die." The drop pod bay filled with the sound of weapons being checked, armor systems coming online, and the quiet prayers of soldiers preparing for battle. Through the viewports, they could see the crystal world spinning below, its beautiful cities scarred by war. "Drop pods away," announced the ship's AI. The Marines sealed their helmets and stepped into the metal coffins that would carry them to the surface. Each pod was barely large enough for one person, packed with enough fuel and armor to punch through, enemy fire, and deliver its passenger alive to the battlefield. They fell like metal meteors. 200 points of light streaking down through the atmosphere. The Zephyrians fired everything they had at the incoming pods. Energy beams and missiles filled the sky. But the human drop pods were built to survive this kind of welcome. The first pod crashed into a Zephyrian position with the force of an artillery shell. The metal shell split open like a flower, and Corporal Min Jun stepped out with his rifle already firing. The aliens had expected negotiation, diplomacy, careful movements to avoid civilian casualties. Instead, they faced humanity's specialty, absolute warfare. The powered armor made each Marine look like an armored demon risen from hell. When Private Hyjin's rifle was destroyed by enemy fire, she used her armor's enhanced strength to tear through a fortified position with her bare hands. When Lieutenant Youngsu's squad was cut off, they fought through 3 kilometers of enemy territory using nothing but determination and fury. The Zephyrians had prepared for an elegant military engagement, the kind of civilized warfare they practiced on other worlds. They had built their positions expecting the humans to approach carefully, to negotiate for the lives of hostages. To fight by the rules of civilized species, they were wrong. The human Marines moved through the battlefield like unstoppable forces of nature. They did not just fight, they adapted, improvised, and never stopped coming. When their weapons broke, they used their armor. When their armor was damaged, they kept fighting anyway. Sergeant Delsu found himself face to face with a Zephyrian, commander in the ruins of a crystal temple. The alien was tall and graceful, his weapon elegant and deadly. But Dalsu had learned to fight in the worst possible conditions, against enemies who wanted to wipe out humanity completely. The fight lasted 30 seconds. The alien never had a chance. Sector 7 clear, Dalsu reported, stepping over the enemy commander's body, moving to the next position. The Cathara civilians watched from their hiding places as these armored figures moved through the alien. Positions like avenging angels. The humans did not just fight to win, they fought to protect. Every shot was carefully aimed, every move calculated to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing damage to the enemy. By dawn, the Zephyrian ground forces were in full retreat, their elegant plans shattered by humanity's simple philosophy: when someone threatens innocent lives, you do not negotiate, you end the threat. The Zephyrian commander, General Thetok, stood among the ruins of his command center like a king surveying his fallen kingdom. Broken screens flickered around him, showing the devastation across the crystal world.
His
army was dead, his fleet destroyed, his reputation in ashes. But he was not finished yet. Thetok was a veteran of 50 conquests, a being who had turned the art of war into a science of terror. His skin was black as space itself, marked with the ritual scars of his people. His eyes burned red with fury and desperation. He had never lost a battle, never retreated from a fight. He would not start now. "Bring me the communication array," he ordered his remaining officers. "I will speak to the human commander." The equipment was damaged, but functional. Thetok stood before the camera, his tall form imposing even in defeat. Behind him, Cathara civilians huddled in cages, their crystal forms dim with fear. He had saved them for this moment, knowing that mercy was a weakness he could exploit. "Human commander," he broadcast on all frequencies, his voice carrying across. "The ruined city, I offer terms. Withdraw your forces, and I will spare the remaining Cathara. Refuse, and I will execute every civilian in this city." The response came immediately, broadcast on every channel for all to hear. Colonel Jae-sung's voice was calm and cold, carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "You came here to commit genocide," the human said. "We came here to stop you. Only one of us is leaving." Thedok's red eyes narrowed. "You would sacrifice innocent lives for your pride?" "No," came the reply. "I would sacrifice your life for theirs." The final battle began at dawn, when the human forces moved into the heart of the Crystal City. Thetok had chosen his ground well, positioning his troops among the towering spires where the Cathara civilians were held. The crystalline structures rose like frozen lightning into the sky, their surfaces reflecting the morning light in brilliant rainbows. The Zephyrians, desperate and cornered, fought with the fury of the damned. Energy weapons lit up the crystalline streets as the aliens made their last stand. They had nothing left to lose, no retreat possible, no mercy expected. They fought like wild animals backed into a corner, but the humans fought with something worse. They fought with the cold, methodical fury of a species that had learned to win wars by making the other side extinct. They moved through the Crystal City like a plague of armored death. It's unstoppable and relentless. Corporal Minjin led his squad through the narrow streets between the crystal towers. The Zephyrians had set up kill zones at every intersection, crossfires. That could tear apart an entire platoon in seconds. But the humans had learned to fight in environments where death waited around every corner. A plasma bolt caught Minjin in the chest, burning through his outer armor and scorching the metal beneath. The energy weapon could have cracked a tank, would have vaporized an unarmored human instantly.
Ow!
But Minjung kept fighting, his powered armor sealing the breach and pumping combat drugs into his system. When his rifle ran dry, he drew his sidearm. When that was empty, he pulled his combat knife. When the blade broke against alien armor, he used his fists, the powered servos in his gauntlets, turning his hands into weapons of destruction. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of worlds, had faced armies and fleets and desperate last stands. But they had never faced an enemy that treated war not as conquest, but as problem-solving with extreme prejudice. The humans did not fight to win territory or resources. They fought to end the threat completely and forever. Sergeant Dalsu found himself in a crystal chamber filled with Cathara civilians. Guards held weapons to their heads, ready to execute them if the humans advanced. It was the classic hostage situation. It was a kind of tactical problem that had stopped armies throughout history. Dalsu solved it by shooting through the crystal wall behind the guards. His rifle fired depleted uranium rounds that punched through the crystalline structure like it was paper. The guards fell before they could pull their triggers, and the civilians were free. Problem solved, Dalsu reported, moving on to the next objective. The battle raged for hours through the Crystal City. The Zephyrians fought with desperate courage, but courage was not enough against an enemy that had learned to win by being more ruthless than anyone else. Every human marine was a veteran of wars that had taught them hard lessons about survival. When the dust settled, General Thetic lay dead among the crystal spires, his elegant sword broken beside him. Colonel Jae-sung stood over the alien commander's body, his armor scarred and smoking from the battle. Around them, the Crystal City sparkled in the afternoon sun. Finally free from the shadow of genocide, the Cathara civilians emerged from their hiding places, their crystal forms brightening with hope and relief. They had never seen war before, had never imagined that such violence was possible. But they had also never seen warriors like these humans, who fought not for conquest, but for protection. "Your world is safe," Jae-sung told the gathering Cathara, his voice carrying across the crystal plaza. "Stay that way." The colonel turned and walked away, leaving the aliens to bury their dead and the Cathara to rebuild their world. The humans had done what they came to do. The genocide was over. 6 months later, the story had spread across the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. In cantinas on distant worlds, traders spoke in hushed voices about the humans who had destroyed an entire Zephyrian fleet with just 3 ships. In the halls of galactic governments, diplomats wondered what this new species meant for the balance of power. Ambassador Su Young stood in the rebuilt Crystal City of Cathara, watching human engineers work alongside Cathara builders. The scene would have been impossible to imagine just months ago. The crystal beings moved with their natural grace, their forms catching and reflecting light as they worked. The humans, bulky in their environmental suits, handled the heavy machinery. With practiced skill, the new communication array is almost complete, reported Chief Engineer Dongman, wiping sweat from his brow. When it goes online, we will be able to talk to Earth instantly, no matter how far apart we are. Sui Young nodded. Watching a group of Cathara children play near the construction site, they had been born into war, but would grow up in peace, thanks to the alliance between their species and humanity. The Cathara had been transformed by witnessing human warfare. Their pacifist nature unchanged, but their understanding of the galaxy forever altered. "We never knew," Elder Ventali had told her during the treaty signing. "We thought the universe was a place where reason could solve all problems. The humans showed us that sometimes the only reasonable response to evil is overwhelming force." The Alliance was already bearing fruit. Cathara provided their quantum communication technology, allowing messages to cross the galaxy in seconds, rather than months. Human engineers shared their knowledge of armor and weapons, while Cathara scientists offered advances in energy, manipulation, and crystal computing, but the real impact was felt throughout the galaxy in ways that could not be measured. The Zephyrian hegemony, one of the most feared empires in known space, had simply disappeared. Their remaining ships had scattered to the far corners of the galaxy, their commanders afraid to show their faces in civilized space. The humans did not just defeat them, whispered the traitors in their cantinas. They erased them from existence. No one knew exactly what had happened after the battle at Cathara. The few surviving Zephyrian vessels that had tried to return to their home territories had been met by human ships waiting in the darkness. The encounters were brief and decisive. The Zephyrians never came home. On the bridge of the Salvation, Captain Young Ho studied the latest intelligence reports. The ship was one of the new generation of human vessels, built with lessons learned from the Cathara campaign. Its hull was thicker, its weapons more powerful, its communication systems enhanced with crystal technology. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Hyren, "we are receiving another distress signal." Young Ho straightened in his command chair. "Put it through." The message was similar to the one the Cathara had sent months ago, but it came from a different species in a different part of the galaxy. "We are the Melnori," the transmission said. "Our world is under attack by something called the Vorthin Collective. They say we are inferior beings and must be sterilized. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us." Young Ho activated his communication system. "Connect me to Fleet Command." Admiral Minho appeared on the screen, his weathered face serious. He had been promoted to Fleet Commander after the Cathara campaign, put in charge of what the politicians were calling the Humanitarian Defense Initiative. The name was fancy, but the purpose was simple: stop genocides before they happened. Another distress signal, Young Ho reported. 3 systems away. Something called the Vorthin Collective is preparing to sterilize a world of inferior beings. Amina leaned back in his chair. The last 6 months had aged him, but his eyes still burned with the determination that had saved the Cathara. "How many ships can we muster?" 47 human vessels, sir, plus 12 Cathara support ships. The numbers would have been impossible before the Alliance. The Cathara ships were not built for war, but their advanced sensors and communication systems made them invaluable support vessels. Working together, the 2 species had created a fleet that could respond to crises across the galaxy. "Signal the fleet," Minho ordered. "Message received. Help is coming." The transmission went out across space, carried by quantum waves that could cross the galaxy in moments. On 59 ships, crews prepared for battle. Human Marines checked their weapons and armor. Cathara technicians calibrated their sensors and communication arrays. Engineers fueled the engines and charged the weapon systems. The word spread quickly through the galactic community. The humans were moving again, their ships leaving Earth's space and heading toward another crisis. In the cantinas and trading posts, beings of a dozen species watched the news feeds with a mixture of fear and hope. The Vorthin Collective had been preparing to sterilize the Melnori homeworld, confident that no one would interfere. They had never heard of humans before, had no idea what was coming for them through the darkness between the stars. But others knew. The story of Cathara had become legend, passed from species to species across the galaxy. The humans had found their purpose among the stars, not as conquerors, but as the armored wrath that stood between the innocent and the dark. The Cathara's salvation had become the galaxy's salvation. And in the endless night of space, predators were learning to fear. The ships that carried Earth's promise, genocide would not be tolerated, and help was always coming.